Stay. It wasn't softness, but it wasn't command either. It came out like a misfired instinct, too fast to be filtered, too quiet to be retracted. The room held still, not because of her voice, but because of the timing. Ceiling lights buzzed in the corners. Half the table was still lit, the other half sunk in uneven shadow. No windows, just reflection. The kind you don't notice when a meeting's in motion, but you feel once everything has stopped. She hadn't planned to come back. But something in the math, in the weight shift they'd all missed, pulled her. And now, staring at a new curve drawn in red, not part of the plan, not authorized, she felt it, that dense, cold pressure behind the ribs, not fear, not anger, just stillness. The kind that only shows up when you realize someone else has seen what you didn't. She wasn't trying to stop him from walking away. She was trying not to walk past something real for the second time tonight, 10 minutes earlier. The boardroom had smelled like cold coffee and collapsing optimism. Alpha 2. Floor 17. The kind of room designed to feel important. High ceilings, glass walls, climate-controlled air, and tension, the kind you could measure in kilowatts. 17 experts, 3 days, almost $1 million burned. And the latest simulation had failed again. Lines of code had bled across the screen in red, logic loops tripping over themselves like a team running blindfolded. And Isla, black suit, high bun, voice like clipped steel, had said only one thing before walking out. We're not building intelligence. We're building excuses. Her heels had echoed once, then she was gone. And the room emptied like someone had pulled the plug. 10 minutes later, only the lights remained, and the hum. That's when Caleb Shaw walked in. Rubber-soled shoes, maintenance badge, cart squeaking faintly with every third roll. He wasn't supposed to read the board, but he did, not with analysis. With something older, instinct maybe. The kind that doesn't need credentials, just pattern memory. He stood there for a moment, mop still in hand, tilting his head like someone watching a wheel spin the wrong way. Then, after a breath, he reached for a red marker. Not to correct, not to overwrite, just to offer a parallel. Far bottom right corner, out of the way. A simpler curve. 2 swapped conditions, a weighted line smoothed out. Then he set the marker down, returned to his mop, and began wiping down the edge of the table like he hadn't touched anything. He was halfway around the room when the door clicked again. He didn't turn, but he stepped back, cloth still in hand, as Isla Vance entered. She didn't look at him, didn't even register his presence. Her eyes went straight to the whiteboard, the mess of loops and dead ends they'd left behind. She walked briskly toward it, tablet already half-drawn from her coat. Her eyes scanned the same lines she'd seen 100 times over the past 3 days. Same failures, same logic traps, until she stopped. Her gaze had caught something, not center, not obvious, just there, bottom right corner, not the team's, slanted, smaller, cleaner, red ink, not hers. She leaned in, read it once, then again, and then, with a flick of her wrist, the tablet was fully out, fingers moving faster now, not annoyed, alert. She entered the variation. The simulation loaded. Code 18.4% accuracy, 61% error rate, no overfit, latency normalized. She stared at the numbers, then slowly turned her head, finally seeing him. Name? Caleb Shaw? Department? Night janitorial? Education? Stanford, AI systems, left junior year. A pause. Why? My daughter was 3, and someone had to show up. She stood still. Then, with one glance back at the board. Here, 10 a.m. tomorrow. Caleb blinked. Just, sure. Why? Her voice lowered, not soft. Because I want you in this room, not just for tonight. A breath, a beat, then again, the word that started all this. Stay. She walked out, and something about the room didn't feel empty anymore. Caleb didn't move at first. He just stood there, cloth in hand, eyes still on the door she'd just walked through. The room felt no different, but somehow it was. He looked down, smoothed the edge of the table one more time. Not because it was dirty, but because it felt like something worth finishing now. Sometimes it only takes one word, not to prove a point, not to make a scene, just to remind someone, or yourself, that you were here, and that maybe you still are. Stay. It's not always loud, not always asked for, but when it's said and meant, it leaves a mark. If you've ever whispered something and thought no one heard, maybe they did. Maybe it mattered more than you knew. So stay with this, not because it's big, but because it's real. And if something in this made you pause, share it with someone who might need to hear, just one word. And if you'd like to hear more stories told this way, you know where to find us.
You're listening to Cobi Tells. We don't just tell, we nourish.
His name was Caleb Shaw, but for the last 6 years, no one at this company called him anything but Night Crew. Before that, he was the guy with the scholarship, the one who built recursive weight models while everyone else was still learning loops. Stanford, AI systems. He was 20 when a professor wrote in his review, "He sees too far, too fast." But that was the year Maya got sick. Not dangerously, just enough to need someone every day, every night. Someone who showed up at the nurse's office, held her hair back at 3 a.m., learned to measure fevers by forehead and instinct. Her mom was already long gone, and code, for all its elegance, didn't know how to hold a child, his shaking hand. So one semester turned into leave. Leave turned into work. Work turned into quiet. He didn't drop out. He just stopped returning emails. Caleb took jobs that didn't require brain space, inventory, shipping, cleaning. Not because he had to, but because he couldn't afford to be tired at home. He told himself it was temporary, that one day he'd go back. Maybe not to school, but to that part of himself that once believed he could build things that mattered. But years passed. Maya grew. The systems evolved without him, and his name slowly faded from every list that once expected it. Still, he watched. Late at night, after Maya slept, he'd read open-source papers on his cracked tablet, run toy models on public sandboxes, fix other people's code in forums, always under a pseudonym. He didn't need credit. He just needed to know he hadn't fully disappeared. But what surprised him most was that the silence stopped hurting. After a while, it just became air. Until tonight. Until a room full of experts walked out, and the board was still warm, and a marker was still there, and something inside him, something old, something that used to leaned forward again. He didn't write to be seen. He wrote to stop the loop from folding in on itself, because he saw it. Clearer than the ones who were paid to look. And when she said it, that word he hadn't heard in years, that word he once held in his own chest, hoping someone might say it to him. Stay. Something broke, and something else began. The next morning at exactly 9:58, Caleb stood outside Alpha 2, same uniform, same shoes, no badge access. He waited. The hallway lights buzzed with a faint, sterile hum. A cleaning cart squeaked as someone pushed it further down the corridor. Caleb stood still, hands in his pockets. The floor under him shined a little too perfectly, like a space not meant to be walked, just passed through. At 10:01, the door slid open from the inside. No smile. Isla stood there. "Come in." He stepped through. The room was full this time. The entire engineering team. Key faces, big voices, chairs pulled close to the table, screens open, coffee already going cold. No one looked up. Isla didn't clear her throat, didn't ask for attention. She just walked to the board, tapped twice, and said, "You all saw the numbers last night. They held this morning. We're keeping the variation." Heads turned. brows lifted. One of the younger engineers, bright blazer, sharper tone, leaned back in his chair. Sorry, keeping whose variation? Isla glanced toward Caleb. Didn't gesture, didn't announce. Just said, Caleb will be here this week, as an observer, and possibly more. The room shifted. A few screens dimmed. No one spoke. Caleb didn't wave, didn't introduce himself, just stood there, quietly, near the far edge of the room. He had been invisible before. But this was different. This was noticed, and not in the kind way. By noon, no one had asked him a question. By 2 p.m., they'd begun speaking around him. We don't even know his last comment. Stanford dropout? That's not a resume. This is political. She's making a point. Isla didn't respond. She didn't defend him. She just kept pulling up test cases and asking only one person for alignment notes. Caleb. He didn't speak much, didn't challenge anyone. But every time he leaned toward the screen, the room felt it. A quiet that didn't ask for permission. Just space. Once, late in the afternoon, he made a suggestion. He leaned closer to Isla, pointed at a line of weight bias and said, It might stabilize better if we don't normalize too early. She nodded, quietly typed it in. The sim ran cleaner. No one commented. Caleb stepped forward with a spare cloth, swapped the keys, ran a quick diagnostic. He didn't say anything. Neither did the engineer. But they didn't look away this time. But one of the engineers scribbled something on their notepad, then erased it halfway. At 4:30, someone spilled coffee on a keyboard. That night, Maya noticed. Her dad came home tired, but not heavy. He didn't talk much. But when he mentioned someone named Isla, his voice did a strange thing. It didn't stiffen like it did when he talked about management. It didn't rush like when he wanted to avoid questions. It slowed. Not because he wanted to, she thought, but because it gave him space. Room to disappear. Smoothed out. And for once, sounded like he was still in the room, even as he spoke. Earlier that week, she'd overheard her dad on the phone, asking to be switched to night shift permanently. But tonight, he sounded different. Like someone who hadn't disappeared entirely. She didn't ask who Isla was, didn't need to. But later, when he went to bed, she took out her sketchbook. She didn't draw her usual stars or characters this time. Just two people, one with a mop, one with a clipboard, and a board between them, almost empty except for one word in red. Stay. Tucked it under the ceramic jar where her dad always left his keys. She shaded the corners softly, like trying not to scare the silence away. She tore the page out, folded it once. Caleb didn't see it that night. But the system was already changing. Not because he asked to be part of it, but because he didn't walk away when he wasn't. By the end of the week, the tension had thinned, not disappeared but softened. The engineers still didn't look at Caleb the way they looked at each other, but they no longer looked past him. He had become a fixture, quiet, consistent, precise. His notes, scribbled on the backs of wiped whiteboard corners, started circulating quietly. One day, someone printed one and taped it to the inside of a supply cabinet. Check the variance gap before you blame the threshold. No one signed it, but the handwriting was unmistakable. On Friday afternoon, Isla pulled him aside after the session. Her tone was clinical, her face unreadable, but her words weren't. I'm assembling a temporary advisory group for Phase 2. Not official yet, but I want you in. Caleb didn't speak right away. They were standing near the west hallway. The glass walls filtered sunlight into long slants across the floor. Outside, someone wheeled in crates of hardware. Inside, it felt strangely still. You don't have to answer now, Isla added, but he already had. I appreciate it, he said, but I can't. She didn't react. Why? I can help clean a system, but I'm not built to live inside it. She folded her arms, gaze narrowing. That doesn't mean you shouldn't. It means I know my edge, and sometimes not stepping forward is the only way something else can. Isla didn't push, didn't pull rank. She just stood there, one foot slightly shifted, like she wasn't sure whether to walk away or not. Caleb looked at her, then added quietly, "There are other ways to leave something better than you found it." That night at home, Caleb saw the folded paper under the ceramic jar. He opened it slowly. 2 figures, 1 mop, 1 clipboard, a whiteboard, and that single word in red, stay. His eyes didn't blink for a long time. The next morning, Isla arrived early, earlier than usual, but the coffee was already warm. The boardroom was empty. Someone had made it before the machine's timer kicked in. She walked to the far corner, her usual spot, set down her tablet, paused. That's when she saw it, taped beneath the lip of the whiteboard, a child's drawing, folded once, edges soft, colors faint. She opened it, stared, and for a moment, Isla Vance, founder, system strategist, woman of margins and metrics, just stood there. The room didn't move, but something inside her did. She sat down, not at the head of the table, but 3 chairs in, where the light didn't hit so hard. At 10:07, Caleb arrived. He wasn't carrying his notes. He walked in like he had the first night, plain, deliberate, quiet. Isla looked up. "You're not on the schedule." "I know." He took something from his pocket, a small USB. "I left a cleaned-up version of the logic tree. Added context, stripped the bias weights. If someone wants to build on it, it's all there." He set it gently on the table, no flair, no speech. She reached for it, then stopped. "Wait," she said. He paused, hand still half outstretched. "Can I ask you something?" she said, voice quieter now. "Of course." She held up the drawing. "Was this from your daughter?" He nodded once. "Her name's Maya. She drew it the night you first asked me to stay." Isla looked at it again, then back at him. "She's observant." "She's 11, he said. A breath. "She notices what people don't say." A beat. Isla didn't move for a moment. Then, setting the drawing down with care, she said, "One more thing." Caleb looked up. 10 a.m., Monday. Come to the west stairwell. No engineers, just me." He furrowed his brow, half smiling. "Why?" She looked him straight in the eye. "Because this time, I want to be the one who shows up." And just before he could respond, she said it again. Not with pressure, not with pretense, but with the same still weight she'd used that first night. "Stay." They never put up a plaque, never mentioned it in the company newsletter. No promotions, no press release. But if you worked long enough on floor 17, you started noticing things. Table 6 in the smaller breakout room was never used for stand-ups. People didn't sit there without checking first. Sometimes it stayed empty. Sometimes someone left a folded towel in the center. Clean, flat, soft corners aligned. No one explained it, but no one moved it either. The whiteboard in the back hallway remained up, though officially decommissioned. It had a permanent red stain near the lower right edge. Someone tried to clean it once. The marker didn't come off. Eventually, people stopped trying. They just worked around it. That stain became a kind of anchor. Like the board was listening now. Like you had to earn the space around it. Every few weeks, a new intern would ask, "Who wrote that line in red?" And someone older, not old, just longer timed, would answer, "Not sure." But it stayed. They never asked again. Maya kept drawing. She never asked if her father had joined the team. He hadn't. But he still passed by the building sometimes. Not to go in. Just to look up at the window of the west stairwell. He said nothing. But he always left something behind. A sticky note under the doormat. A pencil tip on the ledge. A napkin folded too carefully to be trash. Isla found one during a late night. The office had gone quiet hours ago. She stayed back, staring at a report she didn't care about. As she turned off the light, she saw it. A napkin, neatly pressed beneath the glass coffee tray. No signature, just a line written in familiar handwriting. The things we hold stay longer when we stop gripping them. She sat back down, not to work, just to breathe. The words stayed. On whiteboards, on a button in the test lab someone labeled with tape, on the corner of a training dock, watermarked so faintly you had to squint. Stay. No one made it policy, but no one erased it. Some said it was about culture. Some said it was just a story that made people feel better. But the engineers knew. The ones who had seen the simulations fail, the ones who had rolled their eyes and changed their minds, the ones who now brought in extra coffee cups without being asked. They knew it wasn't just about a model that finally ran clean, was about walked away the moment someone without lower churn, better latency. A badge rewrote a line, and without asking to be remembered. At the end of that quarter, the leadership team held a private review. They showed improvements. But what got the longest pause was a line from an anonymous staff survey. We've started listening more, because someone did, when it didn't benefit them. That line stayed on Isla's desk. Beside it, a child's drawing. Edges faded, folded just once. Still there. They never put up a plaque, never mentioned it in the company newsletter, no promotions, no press release. But if you worked long enough on floor 17, you started noticing things. Table 6 in the smaller breakout room was never used for stand-ups. People didn't sit there without checking first. It stayed empty. Someone left a folded towel in the center, flat, soft corners aligned, sometimes clean. No one explained it, but no one moved it either. The whiteboard in the back hallway remained up, though officially decommissioned. It had a permanent red stain near the lower right edge. People stopped trying. Someone tried to clean it once. The marker didn't come off. Eventually, they just worked around it. That stain became a kind of anchor, like the board was listening now, like you had to earn the space around it, every few weeks, but it stayed. A new intern would ask, "Who wrote that line in red?" And someone older, not old, just longer timed, would answer, "Not sure." They never asked again. Maya kept drawing. She never asked if her father had joined the team. He hadn't. But he still passed by the building sometimes. Not to go in, just to look up at the window of the west stairwell. He said nothing, but he always left something behind. A sticky note under the doormat, a pencil tip on the ledge, staring at a report she didn't care about. A napkin folded too carefully to be trash. Isla found one during a late night. The office had gone quiet hours ago. She stayed back. As she turned off the light, she saw it. A napkin, neatly pressed beneath the glass coffee tray. No signature, just a line written in familiar handwriting. The things we hold stay longer when we stop gripping them. She sat back down, not to work, just to breathe. The words stayed. On whiteboards, on a button in the test lab someone labeled with tape, on the corner of a training dock, watermarked so faintly you had to squint. Stay. No one made it policy, but no one erased it, was walked away about the moment someone without a badge rewrote a line. Some said it was about culture. Some said it was just a story that made people feel better, but the engineers knew. The ones who had seen the simulations fail, lower churn. What got the longest pause, better latency. The ones who had rolled their eyes and changed their minds. The ones who now brought in extra coffee cups without being asked. They knew it wasn't just about a model that finally ran clean. It, and without asking to be remembered. At the end of that quarter, the leadership team held a private review. They showed improvements, but was a line from an anonymous staff survey. We've started listening more, because someone did, when it didn't benefit them. That line stayed on Isla's desk. Beside it, a child's drawing. Edges faded, folded just once, still there.
Thank you for listening. If the story moved you, let it move someone else. Share.